Welcome back to Mind Games, where we deep dive into the psychological underpinnings of economic behavior. Today, we're exploring two pivotal concepts in behavioral economics: prospect theory and loss aversion. These ideas have transformed our understanding of decision making. So, let's embark on this journey to unravel the mysteries of the human mind in the face of risk. Let's start at the beginning. Prospect theory, a groundbreaking concept in the field of behavioral economics. It was introduced by two renowned psychologists, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, in 1979. This theory marked a significant departure from the traditional economic understanding of decision making, posited by neoclassical economics. This was predominantly based on the expected utility theory. The conventional wisdom at the time suggested that people make rational choices based on the final outcome of potential decisions, striving to maximize utility and expected gain in a consistent and predictable manner. However, Kahneman and Tversky's prospect theory posited a completely different idea. They argued that people don't necessarily act in their own rational self-interest. Instead, they evaluate outcomes based on potential value gains and losses, rather than just the final outcome. This evaluation is asymmetric and almost irrational, because losses have a greater emotional impact on an individual than an equivalent amount of gains. This is a phenomenon known as loss aversion. So there are a few key components of prospect theory. The first one is called reference dependence. According to prospect theory, people assess gains and losses relative to a reference point, sort of vantage point almost, which is often the status quo. This means that the same outcome can be perceived differently depending on what it's being compared it against or what the reference is. Second, we have loss aversion. This is one of the most critical aspects of prospect theory. It suggests that pain of losing is psychologically about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining. For instance, losing $100 feels more distressing than the joy of gaining $100. You can test this in your own experiences or in studies that we have based on what Daniel Kahneman has done, as well as when we see the emotional outcomes of gambling and of playing games in casinos. The third concept is diminishing sensitivity. This theory also introduces the concept of diminishing sensitivity, which means that the subjective value of gains and losses decreases as the magnitude increases. In simpler terms, the difference in utility between $100 and $200 is more significant than between 1,100 and 1,200. We can see that by this graph here, which was first displayed in prospect theory in 1979. Next, we have probabilistic risk. Kahneman and Tversky also demonstrated that people are not always good at evaluating probabilistic risk. They tend to overestimate small probabilities and underestimate large ones. Now, what are some of the implications of prospect theory? It has profound implications on various fields, not just economics. It includes finance, psychology, and even public policy and implementation of legislation. It explains why people might opt for a sure gain over a gamble with a higher expected value, or why investors hold on to losing stocks for far too long, hoping to avoid the realization of a loss. In summary, prospect theory and the concept of loss aversion revolutionized our understanding of human behavior. In economic decision making, it even highlighted that humans are not always the rational agents, as assumed in neoclassical economics, but are deeply influenced by psychological, cognitive, and emotional factors. Now, central to prospect theory, like I said before, is loss aversion. It's a fundamental human trait affecting a wide range of behaviors, in economics to our daily life. And it's particularly underscored in financial decisions. It's not just a simple observation. It's a profound insight into human psychology. It stems from an evolutionary perspective where avoiding threats or losses was often more crucial for survival than necessarily acquiring gains. This instinctive response has deep roots in our decision making process today. In financial contexts, loss aversion can explain various phenomena. For example, investors might irrationally hold on to losing stocks, hoping to break even rather than selling and reinvesting in more promising opportunities. Similarly, consumers often stick with familiar products or services, avoiding the loss of switching to potentially better alternatives financially and for our lives. Psychologically, loss aversion is connected to the brain's response to negative stimuli. Neuroscientific studies have shown that losses are more emotionally and cognitively impactful than gains. This can lead to a risk averse behavior, where individuals prefer options that minimize the possibility of a loss, even at the expense of higher gains. It's important to note that the degree of loss aversion can vary among individuals and contexts. Factors like personal experience, cultural background, and the specific nature of the risk can influence how strongly a person exhibits loss averse behavior. This concept extends beyond financial decisions. It, it influences choices in areas like policy making, where the fear of potential losses can drive or hinder societal changes. This is something that all legislative members and legislative bodies should keep in mind, as factoring this in could prove to be extremely profitable in the long term. In marketing, this is even extremely helpful, where understanding loss aversion can help in framing messages that emphasize avoiding loss rather than acquiring gains, inspiring customers to hop onto the bandwagon. In summary, loss aversion is like a cornerstone of human behavior, deeply influencing how we perceive and respond to risks and rewards. It challenges the traditional economic assumption of rationality, highlighting the complex, often irrational nature of human decision making. Now, we have the S curve. This is how prospect theory is often visualized. It reflects how people value gains and losses. As seen here, this curve is known as the value function. It is a central element in illustrating the theory's principles. Let's dive into a more holistic understanding of this curve and its significance. The S curve is not entirely symmetrical. It's steeper for losses than for gains, indicating that losses are felt more intensely than gains. The curve has a concave shape for gains and a convex shape for losses. This means that as gains increase, their marginal value decreases, what we explored earlier, diminishing returns. And as losses increase, their marginal pain increases at an accelerating rate. What are the implications of this curve? The steeper slope for losses in the curve visually represents loss aversion. This is where the pain of a loss is greater than the pleasure of the comparable gain. For example, the distress from losing $50 is more intense than the happiness from gaining $50. This asymmetry in the curve is crucial for understanding why individuals often behave irrationally when faced with risky choices. Another aspect of prospect theory represented in the S curve is the idea of decision weights. People tend to overweigh small probabilities and underweigh large probabilities. This means that unlikely outcomes can have a disproportionate impact on decision making. Think about this in your own life. Have you ever heard of a low probability of a chance happening? Have you taken some event and connected it to that probability? Has that made you feel that it's more probable for that to happen, or it's more likely? Think about it. Now, like we talked before, there are also reference points. The S curve also incorporates this concept. It shows how decisions are made based on gains and losses relative to a particular reference point, which is the status quo. This reference point can shift, and with it, one's perception of gains and losses. The S curve helps us explain various behavioral phenomena. For instance, it sheds light on why people might prefer a certain gain over a gamble with a higher expected return, or why they might choose a risky loss over a certain smaller loss. What are some applications of this beyond economics, though? The S-curve model of prospect theory has implications in other areas, such as psychology, public policy, and even health behavior. It helps explain human behavior in diverse situations involving risk and uncertainty. With some modifications, it can be applied to a wide range of contexts. Now, it's more than just a visual aid. It encapsulates key insights about human psychology in decision making under risk. It illustrates the complex interplay of loss aversion, diminishing sensitivity, and probability weighting in our choices. Understanding this curve allows us to better grasp why people often make choices that defy conventional economic logic. Now, let's see some more realistic, real world examples of loss aversion and prospect theory. To see this in action, let's delve into the world of stock market investing, a realm where this phenomenon frequently manifests in intriguing ways. Investors driven by emotional responses rather than purely rational calculations often fall prey to loss aversion, leading to decisions that contradict the rational decision-making models of traditional finance. The first and biggest example of this is holding on to losing stocks. Consider an investor who has shares in a company that has been steadily declining in value. According to rational models, the investor should sell the stock to minimize further losses if the future prospects do not look promising. However, due to loss aversion, the investor might continue holding on to these stocks or these losing stocks, driven by the hope of a turnaround or simply to avoid the emotional pain of admitting a loss. This behavior, known as the disposition effect, shows how the fear of realizing a loss can lead to extremely suboptimal, irrational, and illogical financial decisions. Another one is selling winning stocks too early. Now, this sounds a little weird, right? But investors often sell winning stocks prematurely. For example, imagine an investor whose stock has gained 10% in value. While the fundamental analysis might suggest further potential growth, the investor decides to sell and lock in the gain or realize the gain, driven by the fear that the unrealized gain could turn into a loss. This premature action, motivated by loss aversion, can lead to missing out on significant future profits through compounding or dividends. Another classic example can be seen in the tech stock boom and bust. During the dot-com bubble in the 2000s, in the late 1990s and the 2000s, many investors held on to declining tech stocks, hoping for a rebound, only to face substantial losses when the bubble burst. Conversely, in a bull market, investors might sell off stocks that have gained slightly, missing the opportunity for larger gains as the market continues to rise in the bullish trend. These behaviors underscore how emotions and cognitive biases like regret aversion and overconfidence play a significant role in financial decisions. The pain of a loss feels more immediate and impactful than the pleasure of an equivalent gain, leading to choices that prioritize emotional comfort over financial logic. What are some of the implications of this for investment strategies? Understanding loss aversion can lead to more informed investment strategies. It highlights the importance of setting predetermined guidelines for buying and selling, relying on systematic analysis rather than emotional reactions. Financial advisors often recommend a balanced portfolio and regular review strategies to mitigate the impact of loss aversion on investment decisions. In summary, the stock market provides a clear window into how loss aversion influences behavior. It shows that even in an environment where rational analysis is paramount, human emotions and psychological biases can have a profound impact, often leading to decisions that deviate from what traditional finance would deem rational. Now, what about prospect theory in daily life? It isn't just confined to financial markets. It's evident in everyday life. Think about how you shop. Sales often advertise what you save rather than what you spend, tapping into our loss aversion. Or even consider insurance, where we're willing to pay a premium to avoid potential losses, even when the probability of such losses is minimal. This is another example of how we tend to overplay the probability of such little things, trying to realize it into reality. In professional settings, loss aversion can influence decision making and risk taking. Managers might avoid innovative projects due to the fear of failure, preferring to stick with the status quo. This aversion to loss can stifle creativity and growth. Now, how can financial advisors apply this concept into financial planning and investment strategies? For financial advisors, a deep understanding of prospect theory and loss aversion is not just an academic exercise, but a practical tool for guiding clients. It's essential in crafting investment strategies that not only align with clients' risk preferences, but also take into account their emotional and psychological predispositions towards gains and losses. Let's explore how advisors can implement these insights into their practice. Every investor has a unique risk tolerance and emotional response to gains and losses. Financial advisors can use questionnaires and interviews to gauge this, factoring in the individual's loss aversion level when designing a portfolio. For a client with high loss aversion, a conservative investment strategy with lower volatility might be preferable, even if it means potentially lower returns, as this is what would keep them sane. Educating clients on market realities is also extremely important as an advisor's role. The realities of market fluctuations and the importance of staying the course is underscored by this. We can do this by explaining concepts like market cycles and the historical performance of different asset classes. Through this, advisors can help clients develop a more rational perspective on gains and losses, mitigating emotional reactions to short-term market movements in bearish or bullish sides. Next, advisors can serve as behavioral coaches, helping clients understand and manage their emotional responses. This involves reinforcing the long-term view and dissuading clients from making impulsive decisions based on short-term market news, temporary setbacks, or movements. Diversification is a key strategy in addressing loss aversion. By spreading investments across various asset classes, geographic regions, and sectors, advisors can create portfolios that are less susceptible to volatility in any single area, thereby reducing the potential for steep losses that could trigger a client's loss aversion. We see this in modern portfolio theory with the mean variance analysis, where it shows that in certain percentages and certain breakups, diversification is in fact key to success of a portfolio in the long term. Another strategy involves regularly investing a fixed amount regardless of market fluctuations. It can be particularly effective for loss-averse investors, as it reduces the impact of market timing and lessens the emotional stress of investing a large sum at a perceived wrong time, as it's always set and planned beforehand. Advisors should also work with clients to set clear financial goals and establish exit strategies for each investment. This approach helps in making decisions based on predetermined criteria rather than emotional reactions to market changes. Consider the case of a retired couple concerned about preserving their nest egg. An advisor, recognizing their high loss aversion, might recommend a portfolio weighted towards bonds and dividend paying stocks, which traditionally have lower volatility. The advisor also sets up regular meetings to review the portfolio and discuss any concerns, helping the couple stay informed and emotionally grounded. In summary, financial advisors leveraging prospect theory and understanding loss aversion can create more effective and emotionally resonant investment strategies. By balancing mathematical optimality with emotional considerations, advisors can guide clients towards decisions that are not only financially sound but also psychologically comfortable. Now, for those of you who want some historical context and influence, let's see that, because it is not insignificant. It's not just a cornerstone of field of economics, it's a revolutionary idea that reshaped our entire understanding of human behavior in decision-making contexts. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky challenged the then dominant belief of rational economic agents in neoclassical economics, paving the way for the emergence of behavioral economics. In fact, they won Nobel Prizes for this. In fact, for this groundbreaking work, Daniel Kahneman was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences in 2002, a pure testament to the theory's profound impact in not just prospect theory, but in revolutionizing entire thought processes. Prospect theory laid the groundwork for behavioral economics by actually introducing some psychological insights into economic models. It suggested that people make decisions based on perceived gains and losses rather than final outcomes. And these decisions are often influenced by biases and irrationalities, like we've seen in our other episodes. This was a radical, absolutely radical departure from the classical economics assumption that all people are rational, and things like the efficient market hypothesis, which we in fact explored in our last episode. This theory's implications extend far beyond economics, though. In psychology, it has offered a more nuanced understanding of how people assess risk and make choices under uncertainty. It has influenced areas such as cognitive psychology, where it has been used to explore how people's mental framing of a situation affects their decisions. In politics, prospect theory has even been used to analyze decision making in international relations and public policy. It helps explain why leaders might prefer the status quo over potentially better options that involve risk, and why certain policies aimed at reducing losses can be more persuasive than those promoting gains. In fact, there are even applications in other fields, like medicines, like in the medical field. Prospect theory has influenced how doctors and patients make decisions regarding treatments. Your understanding that patients may respond differently to information framed in terms of survival rates versus mortality rates can significantly impact medical decision making and proper patient care. This theory has also had a significant influence on financial markets and business strategies, as it helps explain market anomalies and investor behavior, leading to the development of new financial products and investment strategies that try to account for these human behavioral biases on the foundational level. The collaboration between Kahneman and Tversky and the subsequent development of prospect theory marked a paradigm, almost beautiful shift in how we understand human behavior. Their work has left an indelible mark across disciplines, prompting a re-evaluation of how decisions are made in uncertain environments. Prospect theory's historical significance lies not only in its revolutionary approach to economic decision making, but also in its broad interdisciplinary impact. It has provided a more realistic lens through which to view human behavior, influencing fields as diverse as what we stated before. Now, beyond individual decision making, prospect theory has applications in understanding market dynamics and economic policy. For instance, it can even shed light on how investors might react in a market downturn, or how consumers expect or respond to tax changes. To conclude, prospect theory and loss aversion provides us with powerful tools to understand the complexities of human decision making. As we navigate our financial and personal lives, these concepts remind us of a profound impact on psychology on our choices. I encourage all of you to read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Truly a beautiful book highlighting his adventures with Amos Tversky and some of the applications of behavioral finance and economics on the wider realm. He talks about the history and the process and journey it took to come through prospect theory and winning the Nobel Prize. Truly an amazing book. Thank you. And that's all today for this week's episode. I encourage you to come back for more. Thank you. This was One.